Hello and welcome to the Daily Debate Live Wednesday with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be talking a very interesting topic, why climate education is quite necessary. Because it is becoming increasingly obvious that bold, quick as well as collective action is required in order to reverse the harm that has already been existing of climate change that has already been done to Earth. The new republic today is sparing no effort to integrate the modern environmental concepts into the educational curricula. Today, the education system is enabling the children to understand as well as to grasp that the climate is changing, that temperatures are increasing, and that everyone needs to get involved. Tonight, along with our global educational expert, Mrs. Senida Kehi, will be discussing how climate change is today mainly integrated in our educational system. Why is it very important to integrate climate action? Why climate education is necessary meantime as we are talking climate action in the different specialities. A very important file before the mother of the world is attracting the world attention to COP27. Mrs. Senida Kehi, global educational expert, thank you so much for coming to Nile TV.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Senida, and we'll be talking this important headline and awareness vis-a-vis this headline. But first, let's have a look at the top stories of the day. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi witnessed on Wednesday the inauguration ceremony of the complex of the Egyptian black sand in Al Borolo city in Kafr al-Sheikh Governorate. The ceremony was attended by Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli along with a host of ministers and senior state officials. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi stated that the black sand plant in Kafr al-Sheikh is the first of its kind in the world and most advanced mining equipment aiming to optimize the use of the natural resources and to attain added value of minerals extracted from the black sand to be used in the micro industries. A matter that mainly paves the way to support national economy and to achieve the overall development. The documentary was screened themed Sand of Gold during the inauguration of the Black Sand Complex. The documentary displayed President al-Sisi's directives to implement Egypt's 2030 sustainable strategy that calls for making use of the natural resources, including black sand. And we're back. We're discussing climate change. We're discussing climate education tonight, reading more about this important detail. Let's have a look at this report and we will be back for further discussion. Let's watch.
The Egyptian authorities are working around the clock to host, on behalf of the African continent, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change 2022, COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, on November 6th to the 18th of 2022. No doubt education is a critical agent in addressing the issue of climate change. In this regard, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change assigns responsibility to parties of the convention to undertake educational and public awareness campaigns on climate change and to ensure public participation in programs and information access on the issue. In this respect, Egypt's new system of education is focusing on various environmental concepts such as climate change, biodiversity, and environmental sustainability, especially in the kindergarten and primary stage. Focusing on inculcating different environmental concepts as environmental education and teaching its correct concepts in childhood is one of the important topics the new republic cares about. Education can encourage people to change their attitudes and behavior. It also helps them to make informed decisions. In the classroom, young people can be taught the impact of global warming and learn how to adapt to climate change. And because education empowers all people, but especially motivates the young to take action, Egypt is keen to make the COP27 climate conference inclusive of all parties, as the country adopts a new and different idea from previous climate conferences by focusing on implementation through the participation of civil and local society, youth and the private sector with ideas, solutions innovations and experimental projects, paving the way for school students, along with their innovations, to be present at the conference, aiming to motivate and support distinguished students to take part in addressing environmental problems, raising awareness at an early age and teaching individual responsibility for environmental protection is hence key to societal efforts around the globe in successfully mitigating the effects of climate change.
Still watching the Daily Debate Wednesday with Taghreed Hussein, and my dear guest is Mrs. Senida Kehi, global educational expert. Ms. Senida, talking about the significance of discussing and mandating climate education, which is actually coming very much timely as the mother of the world is being prepared to host COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Right. So let's start with the beginning. Climate change is supported by science, and in my preparation for this topic, I have done a bit of research, and I have I've seen that there are more than 11,000 scientific articles submitted for peer reviews. And out of these, only about 73 that kind of deny the phenomenon of climate change. I think that most of us feel the climate change via what's happening in nature in our countries all over the world, like longer summers and hotter summers and winters and colds and
heat waves, sweeping.
Exactly. So I think that first of all, we need to raise awareness that this exists, and then to start with education at individual level to see what we can do about it. Now, research also shows that right now there are no solutions regarding on how to stop climate change from happening, but there are solutions on how to delay its effect on our planet. And I think this is where education can start raising awareness and empower children and adults, of course, to know what to do about it. Education is probably the most important tool right now that we have at hand to make sure that future generations do a little bit better than our generations or the past generations.
Yes.
And it starts with simple programs like, for example, recycle, reuse, reduce in every school. It starts with simple programs that show students how to what to do with waste, for example, which can be reused. It starts with just raising awareness of how different societies act and how that impacts our consume, for example, impacts other nations. So it's not just, for example, green, what's it called, the greenhouse gases that talk about it. It's also what we do with what we produce, for example, our technology, our food, our clothes, and what we do with that waste also has a big impact on our planet. So it's not just fossil fuels, which obviously do have an impact, but it's up to individual use of everyday life, for example, that impacts our planet.
Yes, that's great what you're saying, Mrs. Senida, because when we're talking climate change, we're talking also about the youngsters, and as you've mentioned, that we are giving them lessons to be learned by having their hands-on the different material that they use, for instance, at school. So in a way or another, we are succeeding in raising this sense and this level of awareness. We are also helping the students to know and understand what is happening. How do you see this idea of getting the students involved to understand their environmental surroundings and to know how to cope?
So there is something that's very important right now happening in schools around the world. Only 3 countries, respectively Argentina, Cambodia, and Italy, have included climate change as part of their weekly curriculum in schools. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes.
Most schools have maybe a week which they dedicate to climate change awareness. That's still better than nothing, but I was very surprised to find out that only 3 countries in the world have climate change as part of their curriculum. Now, other schools, of course, do some steps towards raising awareness. And like I said, in some schools that I visited, there is a recycling program that can be, again, the food waste that students produce, or it can be students bringing to school old clothes so they don't end up somewhere abandoned and then creating waste. Of course, reuse. So we know how important it is to, for example, the use of plastic, or not use of plastic, I should say. Or if you do use plastic, then make sure that you reuse it until it's good no more, so to speak. So everything is important, even if they are small steps. But of course, experts in climate change would like to see this implemented at a lot more generous level, so to speak. If students were to have this as part of their curriculum, it would create a daily base awareness of what's happening. Maybe they would be more careful on how they spend their, I don't know, everything they use in school, for example, and they would be more careful when they go home and have to deal with the households. Many times we know that changes start with the young generation, and I know of parents who have received lessons from their children just because they learn things in school. And they were like, from now on, we are not supposed to use this kind of product because it comes from, I don't know, palm oil, and that is damaging for the environment and for the animal world, for example. So I think there are lots and lots of steps in the right direction, but in order to achieve our objectives, we probably need to include it more often in our curriculum, more regularly, I should say, in our school curriculums. And in that case, we create a generation that's not only aware of climate change, but educated in how to deal with it.
Yes, a generation that is completely aware in how to deal with climate change. And I was happy with your comment when you talked about the parents, they themselves receiving more info from their kids and learning from their kids and what they received at school. But if we take it the other way around, the role of parents in this sense of awareness, their coaching to their kids in this direction, this is also a very important issue.
Yeah, the parents should be the role model for their children. But again, I think that our generations and the generations before ourselves maybe have had it less, they were less aware of their impact on everything that's happening on this planet. So that's why, as an educator myself, I think we're at the point where we need to concentrate on the young generations because the future belongs to them, and they will probably lead the way for everybody. Even I have to learn, just because I live in this world. It doesn't matter how old you are, you need to learn of what's happening and how your everyday activity, consumerism, everything you do impacts the planet, and how your country and the way your lifestyle in your country may impact the global society, because at the end we're like one big family, and what one of us does kind of has an impact on other countries and other people as well.
Yes, not only are the students who need actually to be prepared for climate action and to the repercussions of climate change, but also grown-ups need to be prepared as well and need to have this sense and this level of awareness. Egypt, as you know, Senida, is a country that invests in the human level, and the president pays special attention to investment in the people and building the Egyptian character, while preparing the human capital for the sense of resilience and taking action vis-a-vis climate change. What do you think?
I think that's amazing because, like I said, climate change or everything, if we want change, let's just talk about change, it needs to start with each one of us. So it cannot be done only with one generation. It needs to be done with everybody who's presently here now and has an impact on this planet, for better or for worse. So we need to all be aware and change our action if we have to. And as educators, we need to lead by example. And I think the conference that's about to happen in Egypt is again to raise not only national but international global awareness that this exists and there's something we can all do to slow it down. And in the meantime, look for solutions to hopefully make it better or stop this process that's really not beneficial for anybody and not for our planet for sure.
Yes, definitely. It is inevitable, definitely, for climate change education to be embedded in the curricula because this is going to have a very important impact. What sort of positive impacts do we have? What sort of other benefits that can be generated by including the sense of awareness in our curriculum concerning climate change and taking climate action?
Yes, if we talk about fossil fuels, I suspect that future generations are going to be more careful when choosing a car, for example. We know that the technology exists now for example, electric cars. I know that Egypt is also preparing for a future where cars are probably going to be electric rather than based on fossil fuels. It's slowly, but it's a step in the right direction. So, yeah, for example, that could be one of the choices that students make. Another choice could be, for example, in education, when building new schools, we could think about how we could make them in such a way that we help our planet. For example, we could ensure that there's enough sunlight in the school in order to reduce the electricity, the use of electricity in school. Is not only beneficial for our body, for our human being, for our mental being, because we know that sunlight is a lot better than electricity, but it also reduces the use of electricity, which is another problem in this world, especially in the present days with all the instability by walls, and the winter is about to come, and yeah, the prices are completely through the roof, and yes. For example, schools could do a lot more in terms of recycling of all kinds. Most schools have a swimming pool. Most schools use water for, obviously, for cleaning, for hygiene. There could be a system in place where that water could be recycled and reused in such a way to benefit the planet, rather than what's happening now, right? What else? I've visited schools where everything that students throw away in terms of food waste, it's reused as compost, and after that the same school might have a little garden where students learn the use of, you know, how
the
to...
whole cycle.
Exactly, and that's also beneficial. Or they even have little animals like rabbits or hamsters or like that, and they feed those animals with that. Yes, lots of things that a school as a building can do, and students can already learn that from the school. For example, use of solar panels instead of the usual electricity and petrol and all the stuff that we use to heat up the school, for example, to excuse me, to warm up the school, I wanted to say, or to keep it cool,
Yes.
especially in a hot country, like in a desert country like Egypt, where the ACs have to be at maximum because obviously the weather is just hot. We could think of systems where this could be used less and make use of this green technology.
Yes,
That's
great that you mentioned green technology, because we do have here in Egypt a very important presidential initiative which is called Prepare for the Green, or اتحضر للأخضر. We need to see more the green color more in the country, and in this sense definitely the state is encouraging sustainability. So how is that?
Yeah, it's amazing. Planting trees, I was thinking.
Yeah.
There are a lot of schools which have just some shady or covered areas for students to play during recess. I think that the temperature could be reduced by planting trees. There are trees specific for the desert, if we were to talk about desert countries, that obviously need very little water, only from time to time. And in that case, we know scientifically that a street without trees can be up to 10 degrees hotter than a street with trees.
Yeah.
So I believe that a very nice courtyard where students can play in a shady area but by trees, and therefore decreasing the temperature naturally, is very beneficial.
Yeah, well, we all need to be quite hands-on if we're going to take procedures concerning climate action, whether grown-ups, the youth, kids as well. Let's watch this break. We'll be back. You are the greatest love to me, namely Egypt, as we have watched in the beautiful song Senida. And as the mother of the world is prepared to host COP27, we are going to be receiving, of course, heads of state, dignitaries, of course, think tanks, decision makers around the world. And it is from vision to implementation this time, Senida. So it's time to take action.
Yes.
That's why we say that this round of COP27 is extremely significant and important, and we are going to have messages of implementation from Egypt to the world.
I think that it's very important that most important leaders of the world are going to participate. And hopes are high, because when everybody is united in one objective, then hopefully this time it will happen. And I think it's a very exciting time that puts Egypt on the map as the front runner of climate change.
Yeah.
We know that Egypt is a country with a lot of desert, and it's a country that can lead by example in terms of green technology, even in spite of the harsh conditions that the land might have, for example. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to see what the new research says, what all the scientists have come up with, because we need science to come up with solutions, and then we need the politicians to follow with rules and regulations that make sure that those solutions can be implemented, and therefore a better planet achieved.
Definitely. We have also many roles, as we were talking, need to be like hands-on. We talked about the role of parents in creating a sense of awareness for the kids. We talked about youth at schools, and sometimes they come up with ideas to benefit the parents. We also talked about the role of educators and intellectuals in creating this sense of awareness concerning the importance of climate action. How about women? Women also have a very important role to play vis-a-vis climate action.
Women always have an important role to play, especially when it comes to education, for the simple reason that still in the world they seem to be spending more time with the children than men do.
Yeah.
In many countries, men tend to be the providers. Don't get me wrong, of course, there are many countries where both men and women work, also in Egypt, but still, globally speaking, men tend to be the providers and women tend to be the ones that take care of the household and implicitly the kids' education. And I think that in that aspect, women have a more significant role when it comes to this subject. And for that, I would encourage schools, for example, when they have their climate change awareness week, to include the parents. It's not enough to just educate the kids. It's absolutely vital, very important. But I would like to see something more like common projects where parents can come to school, see it for themselves. I have visited some amazing schools where all these green technologies have been implemented. And I was wondering how many parents have had access to these schools. Of course, 2 years of COVID have been so difficult, and a lot of parents have not been allowed in schools for obvious reasons. We understand why. But I was wondering if you were to visit a school like this, and when you see everything working for better, when you see the bills reduced by implementing some of these green energies, how many people would think, I want that in my house as well, for example, yeah? And also, how many parents get involved in their children's learning journey, and when the children come home and said we had a climate change awareness week, ask them, how can we as a family implement some of the stuff that you have learned there? I know of families who have reduced certain products because the children refuse to eat certain products which are damaging for the environment. Palm oil was one of the things that I mentioned. So yes, women are the front runners of
the nucleus of their families.
Of course, yes. And if they implement certain rules for their household, they will be respected. Of course, not only women, but just because we talk about women, then yes, we're going to say that.
Definitely. Well, we're expecting a very big event to be taking place on Egyptian soil. The Minister of Environment described Egypt's hosting of this important conference, the COP27, as a very big dream, ensuring that we will really very much be proud of hosting this important event, and that it is held on charming Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. The Minister of International Cooperation had added that COP is a COP of implementation. It's a COP where adaptation and resilience come together hand in hand, and it is going to be a very active COP. For the planning minister, Dr. Hala Said, she highlighted the importance of the opportunities discussing the negative impacts of climate change during COP27, as she explained that the MENA region will continue to suffer impacts that might exceed adaptive capacity from increasing temperatures and also the rising of the sea levels. So it's a COP of implementation, a very important COP. How do you see it being held in Sharm el-Sheikh? That Sharm el-Sheikh is hosting this event.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Sharm el-Sheikh is one of the most remarkable resorts, Egyptian resorts, at the Red Sea. And there are lots of people coming here on holiday, maybe even more so than Cairo itself, than the capital. So I'm hoping that the guests will be able to see for themselves what the impact of environment has on sea life, for example. The Red Sea is just there. It's full of amazing corals and fish and reefs, and maybe it can be started from there. How about the impact of tourism on?
Definitely, it's going to have a great impact, like visiting the different sites, and you see, although the delegations coming are going to send messages, they are going to be ambassadors here to their countries.
Exactly, yes. And I think it's just very, very important for Egypt as a host of this international event, because it's going to put Egypt on the map. Everybody is going to know that Egypt is a country that thinks about the future, is trying the best it can to educate their own population as well as the world on what to do about delaying this process of climate change for
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Hopefully, one day we'll find a way to stop it. But for now, we're working at delaying it. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all the experts what else we could do to make this less threatening for future generations.
Yes, definitely. The President launched the Digital Transformation Initiatives, and this is giving directives to the government to invest in artificial intelligence, and we are paying special attention, Senida, to digitization. You've attended recently a very important forum talking digitalization and education. So both also go hand in hand for the future. It's very important.
Yes, yes. And exactly because we're talking about digitalization, probably for the first time, I have come with some notes on my mobile phone, just to lead by example. So digitalization in education it means technology-enhanced education. And just as the definition says, it means the effective use of technology in education in order to make it better or more efficient. It's not online learning. It's the same kind of education that we have all experienced, but with the added value of having the technology and the digital tools there to help us grow better, faster, have access to a multitude of information, resources at our hands very quickly. So present generation does not need to go home and research. At times they do. They can just do it right there at home, right there in the classroom, and come up with answers and conclusions. It's very exciting. I think for our generation and maybe older generation, it's a little bit intimidating. We find it may be difficult to let go of books and paper and
the traditional way of doing it.
Yes, yes. But just a few days ago, I have visited a wonderful school here in Cairo. It's a new school. It started in 2019, just before COVID hit. And you could see not only the green energy implemented, like we mentioned when talking about climate change, but we have also seen the digitalization happening right there very effectively from year 6 upward. I was very impressed by how students manage technology just the way, I guess, we used to manage books. How interactive it was, how efficient it was. Of course, it wasn't just the students, it was the teachers who knew how to manage the technology very effectively and who knew how to teach in an interactive way. Just because it's technology, it doesn't mean that your eyes are on the screen and you start learning by yourself. It means that you can still be interacting and form a family, but this time digitally. So when the students' answers appear on the screen, each student had the time to answer, but instead of verbally saying it, it just popped on the screen. And the teacher could, in a second, see what every student had in mind, or what opinion the student had on a specific subject. I thought it was amazing. Of course, talking about climate and all that, it also means paperless desks. And so paper is less encouraged. I will just keep talking about this particular school. And although some students, if they choose to, they are still allowed to use, for example, notebooks or turning their homework on paper rather than the tablets, the digital tools that they had at hand. But the students were really not bothered at all by the use of screens and keyboards. And they didn't seem to miss necessarily the pen and paper. And the school were absolutely sure that this was the way forward, and this was the way that school was going to develop from now on.
Great. Talking digitization and artificial intelligence, even before air, we were talking about how far is it going. AI, artificial intelligence, change the face of life. How far is it going to affect jobs in the future? Definitely also it is going to be affecting the educational trends in the future. How do you see that, Senida?
Well, as I've already confessed that as a teacher, as a qualified teacher, and then as a teacher trainer and somebody who's worked in education for 20 years, I find that difficult. I find it difficult to let go of not only teaching, but teaching others how to teach, right? Training others how to be teachers. Research clearly shows that technology will be able to fully automate teaching. It's probably going to start very easily. For example, we know that anything that's mechanical these days can be done by a robot. Students' attendance, easy. Yeah. Maybe students' progress. A lot of schools have already got some kind of electronic form to keep updated, keep the parents updated on their children's progress or assessment reviews. Or so anything that's mechanical, a robot can do it right now. Maybe right now technology is still a little bit expensive, hence not many schools have it implemented. Yeah. But it's getting there.
But one day or another, it is going to be clearly the trend in the future.
Clearly, yes, yes. And I have done some research, and the Leadership Society of Arizona says that we are finding that every aspect of education is being automatic, including the teacher. And for me, that was probably the scariest. Oh no, no creativity. I've always assumed that robots can only do so much, and creativity will be one aspect that robots might not be able to compete in terms of human interaction. However, research and people who know about this technology believe strongly that this will not be the case. In the future, every child might have a teacher, a virtual teacher, or an AI that would be able to teach that child at their full capacity. An AI that knows the strengths and weaknesses of the child, can adapt and can unlock this child's maximum potential. That's extraordinary. It's somehow exciting and a bit frightening. But again, by then, who knows where I'll be, and I'm sure
we are going to be having also robots as anchors, where we might all be. I mean, still it might affect many of the professions in the future.
It will affect our children for sure. As a parent, I'm already thinking about that. It's not only my profession at stake here, but I'm thinking about his life in the future, and also what job he might be able to have, for example, because in such a digitalized environment, kids need today to prepare for that in order to be efficient and have the best job. So it's something of concern, but also of excitement.
Yes, it is. Talking academia, collaboration, and technology transfer is really very interesting, and educating people on automation. How do you think it can go smoothly? In what way will we be able to convince them that they need to keep pace with what is happening in order to keep pace with what is happening worldwide, I mean?
I think it's slowly coming in. Like I said, it starts. COVID has given us a big push forward, I think. It obliged us overnight to become digitalized. And all these platforms that have appeared and have facilitated digital learning, some of them more efficiently than others, have contributed to to bring this digitalized future nearer. I don't think we've ever imagined to have a school that would be online for months. At the beginning, it might not have been very efficient. I think that there were some drawbacks. A lot of parents and teachers, as well as children, missed the human interaction. And we know that because it kind of came suddenly and too quickly, it might have had an impact that we wish it didn't, on social relations, for example, social development, especially socially. However, it did have a great impact on students who are introverts. There's research to show that students who don't usually perform well in a group or in front of a class, they were probably the best in front of a screen. So right now, I think there's a time of blended learning, more than fully digital or fully face-to-face, and slowly moving towards digitalization, clearly.
Yes, and New Egypt is making actually science and advanced technology a top priority today, talking climate change, climate action. As we've seen, education is very important vis-a-vis climate action. What could be your messages to COP27, Senida, tonight? What are you expecting out of this prestigious gathering taking place on Egyptian soil?
I feel that I'm very little important, not very important in such a global, incredible conference and an event that's going to happen in Egypt. For me, I'm just curious to know what science brings on board. We've heard about global change for a long time. We know that it exists. We know that it's very difficult to tackle it. And we know that by bringing individual awareness on what's happening, things are going to move in the right direction. I don't really have a message for them because I'm not an expert. However, I'm looking forward to the conclusions and the active steps that we can take in order to tackle this very serious situation that is happening all over the world.
Hopefully, definitely, we are all looking to this important event taking place on Egyptian soil. Thank you so much, Mr. Senida Kehi, Global Educational Expert, for joining us here on Wednesday Debate Live. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, and as always, my pleasure.
Thank you. And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. I'm Tagherit Hussein. Many thanks for watching.